My name's David Lorimer. I'm the Program Director of the Scientific and Medical Network, and this is part of a series of interviews with honorary members of the network about their life and work and contributions that they have made. And I'm here today with Professor Ravi Ravindra, who's a very old friend. We met in the late 1980s, and it's a delight to be with you, Ravi, and to ask you a few questions.
I'm delighted to be with you also, David. Please feel free to ask whatever.
So the questions I'm going to be asking, they begin with who and or what inspired you in your line of work?
Well, really, whenever I look back, I am surprised, in fact, that very early on in my life, I was just asking myself, who is Ravi? Is Ravi basically this body? And when I look around, everybody would die, including this Ravi. So for me, one of the fundamental questions has been, why has this Ravi been created, by whom? And what happens when the body associated with Ravi will die? So deep down, one might say, who am I, or why am I here, or who has created me? These have been the basic questions that have really occupied me right from very early on, at least from the school days that I can recall.
And they led you into a number of different educational initiatives, didn't they? They're beginning with
Yes.
technology and moving on to physics and spirituality.
Yeah, well, initially, of course, in India, particularly when I graduated from high school, which was soon after India became independent, there was a strong demand, almost as if to do well in the world, to help the society, one should become a technologist or an engineer. In fact, our prime minister at that time, Nehru, even made this remark about the engineering college that I went to, called the Indian Institute of Technology, that these are the temples of New India. There was very strong emphasis. So I went there, but soon I realized that technology was really not my feeling about it very strongly. So I wanted to learn fundamental physics. So I came to the University of Toronto to do a PhD in physics, but soon I realized that science really does not quite answer the kind of questions that was really occupying me. I did fairly well in physics. In fact, I have published a highly reviewed book also in the theory of transmission of waves. But gradually then I shifted more and more towards, first of all, philosophy, then religion. So I have ended up teaching courses in physics, in philosophy, and in religion. That has been my life situation.
So it's a journey inwards, I would say.
Journey inward, yes.
Journey inwards. And
but not,
what do you think
not
of?
eliminating the journey outward. I don't feel
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And what do you regard as your most significant contributions in terms of your work?
Well, really, from looking at it from a kind of an external perspective, these will be my publications in physics, philosophy, spirituality. But from my own personal perspective, very strong emphasis on, first of all, to really ask oneself, I keep emphasizing this, that the fundamental question of why am I here, or who am I? So in many of my speeches or writings or webinars, I emphasize this very much. And then one thing that I have felt very strongly, that there is a bit of a tendency as if spiritual search and scientific research are incompatible with each other. In my judgment, this is completely silly. To be sure, they have different assumptions, different procedures, different practices, even different aims. But in any reasonably intelligent person, seriously interested, they can be happily reconciled. They're not contradictory to each other. So that has been one of the directions that I have been trying to pursue. And secondly, trying to really speak again and again that no particular tradition or religion has a monopoly of truth. That there are great sages everywhere. And of course, stupid people everywhere also. There is no limitation of either. and therefore, one can, for example, a Hindu can happily learn something from a Christian. In fact, I have even said this in writing even. I'm happy to be born a Hindu, but I'll be really sad if I die merely a Hindu. Why can't I learn something from Christ or from Rumi or Lao Tse to be sure, most of us don't have enough time to study all the sages seriously, but we don't need to dismiss them, even if we may not be able to study them deeply. That's my general emphasis.
No, indeed. And you often say that we should use the language of pilgrims.
That's right.
Inter-pilgrim dialogue, which I very much like.
Yes.
And then, Ravi, how do you see the evolution of consciousness studies and the relationship between science and spirituality over the next 20 years?
Well, really, as you know, at present, all the branches of science, biology through biophysics, geology through geophysics, even psychology, they all want to become really ultimately branches of physics in one way or the other. My impression is that the real revolution in consciousness studies will make physics, which is generally the queen of the sciences now for the last 300 years, will make physics as a branch of psychology. But personally, I'm not that optimistic that it will happen very soon. It may take hundreds of years, partly because physics is so intimately connected with technology, especially since the end of the 19th century, starting in Germany. And technology, of course, gives you power in military, in industry, everywhere else. So it's not going to be so easy to shift that whole dimension. But this is a great call of the SMN, and I'm happy to subscribe as much as I can.
Yes, thank you. And how do you see the significance of the SMN, to researchers in the field and to the wider society?
Well, I think SMN, first of all, by even bringing many people of more or less similar interests, not dismissing the spiritual practices or the study of consciousness, this itself is very helpful. Because if a person is somewhere isolated just by oneself and all the academics around you are convinced that materialist science is the only way to do proper study, one is not able to survive that kind of limitation. So SMN has actually helped, at least in my case, to bring me in contact with other people who are seriously interested in also spiritual practice, but they're not against science. Actually, initially, maybe it is still true, but if I remember when I initially joined the Scientific Medical Network, you had to be at least have an MSc in science to be able to become a member of this. But so first of all, and then even setting up the Galileo Commission, here is an example, which of course undertakes trying to provide a lot of importance to consciousness research. Now, it's not easy to shift these things so much as one may sometimes hope or even imagine, but nevertheless, this is a very important undertaking that SMN has undertaken. So I'm very happy to be part of that organization.
Well, thank you. And also, for your support and the many talks that you've given, going right back to the 1990s. I think at one point you gave a talk, for instance, I remember well, with John Moriarty in 1999, when we were talking about the sun. And yes. I have a wonderful photo of you and John on stage at Winchester after your talks.
I see. No, I have. In fact, I think at one stage when you were showing how many times people have participated or given talks at SMN, I was surprised that I was among the people who had spoken there the maximum number of times.
I think that's absolutely right, Ravi. And then just a final question, what have been your most important lessons from life, both personally and professionally?
Well, first of all, really it partly comes from the spiritual side, that it is the quality of one's being that is much more significant than what I own, how much I'm recognized, do I get this kind of prize or that kind of prize? So a quality of being ultimately really means more awareness, more sense of unity, more compassion for other people, and more kind of really humility. Many of these things can be misunderstood, but personally, from my point of view, more and more to search what is the quality of my being rather than how much do I own. or how much I'm recognized. That's really the important shift that I feel necessary.
No, I very much agree, because it's really only the quality of one's being that one can take into another dimension.
Yes.
Ravi, thank you very much indeed for your time and wisdom.
Well, I'm happy to speak with you. We have known each other for several decades, but have not personally met now, partly because of this COVID problem. But I hope one of these days we'll meet again.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you very much.